Rico. So I want you to know that this unit is probably, in terms of importance, is one of the highest priorities for next year. You want to really, work hard at conquering this one. When it comes to the regressions, especially your domain and range, all of that. And the AC will probably have some of that, and tomorrow we'll do a little bit more domain and range and that kind of stuff, so you're prepared. For the most part, I saw little concern. I'm just going to clarify a few things. All right, so here we go. Consider the quadratic equation, determine all the characteristics, then graph, include labels. Notice that there's no context here. There's no word problems. You're not restricted. Your graph should encompass all four quadrants. Arrowheads are good. Okay, so that's one of the things that some of you missed. You stopped kind of at the x-axis because I kept on doing that towards the end because most of, like, we were working with word problems, right? So you got to watch out for that. Direction of opening, down because A is negative, or leading coefficient is negative. That's everything. It was fine there. However, you chose to answer that. The x-intercepts, there are two. One was negative. Some of you missed that, so watch out, but make sure you include keystrokes. The y-intercept, you could have just read it off of your, this is in general form, so some of you just chose to do it that way. The vertex is right here. The axis symmetry is just, right, this is the axis of symmetry right here. So it's the x value, and it's an equation. It's one that goes vertically through the vertex. Domain, all of the real numbers, squiggly brackets on either side, or negative infinity to positive infinity, round brackets if you do interval notation. Feel free to write this down. It's good practice. Range, if you use the set notation, it's pointing down, so y should be less than or equal to the, let me highlight that. I'm going to just grab, it's the vertex that helps you answer that one. So y values have to be less than or equal to that highest y value that you got from the vertex. And the order matters. For the most part, I was happy. Like we were, and you have to have a square bracket at the number and then a round bracket where the infinity is. And I don't know what happened to these squiggly brackets. They used to be there, faded. So keep that in mind. When it came to the graph, I looked for consistent scale. Consistent. So you have to have it consistent throughout. And so I chose 10 here, and I chose, well, 50 for every 5 boxes. That's what I did here. So X and Y, I looked for that. I looked for arrowheads. I looked for the equation, all that stuff. So if you had all of that, you were good to go. So remember, no context, everything goes. This one is type 1, where you had to come up with this. Overall, done fairly well. Some of you got to watch out with the rounding. I'm going to warn you here. It didn't make a big difference overall, but the calculator rounds. When you enter this into L1 and L2, it rounds this to 72,563. The calculator will not use the rounded value. It just shows you the rounded value. So just watch out, I guess, if you use that method. You were supposed to compare price and profit, so that's the equation you get there. And then the maximum expected revenue, you find the vertex, and then you tell me it's the 80,000 that you wanted. And some of you had maybe forgotten to add units or whatnot, but overall, you were doing all right. Yeah. Yeah. Here's the good news. Some teachers don't want to tell you ahead of time because they think you're going to purposely forget to add units every time, but they only take it off once. If you forget to add units once on the exam, that's it. You don't take off more than half a mark for the entire exam. Because they don't believe that penalizing you every single time. Like once is good enough. You forgot your units, that's it, right? But on the test, or on my assessments, I take off a maximum of 1 mark per page. So if you forgot 10 times on that page, you're only going to lose 1 mark because it's enough is enough, right? Yeah. All right. So over here, the quadratic formula, some of you knew exactly what you had to do. I'd say most of you, if not all of you, maybe some of you made a mistake. But here's your ABCs, right? You have it so that it's equal to 0. And only then can you do this properly. I don't know if some of you didn't type in the negative, but you were supposed to get root of 576. And make sure this is highlighted. If this line goes all across, not some of you were just making that line under the root. It's entirely across the expression. So that division piece comes at the very end. Once you add or subtract, like here I add, here I subtract, I do that top part, and then I divide by 18 at the very end. So that's important to remember. Other than that, you could have double checked this using your calculator. You could have typed in this one and then found the x-intercepts, or you type in this into y1, this side into y2, and find the intersections between the two curves, and found it that way. There are ways to verify this. And here I need to pause a little bit because, well, this one was done fairly well. The general form, you guys are fine, right? So you're like downwards has to be negative, narrow has to be bigger than 1, and then the y-intercept, pretty much everybody had a -5 there, so way to go. This one is the one you need to maybe beef up your study sheet a little bit. So let me take some time here. Vertex form looks like this. It looks like this, where the vertex is, let's go plus h k. Right? So this changes signs, right? Like if this is a negative, the vertex, if you state it, would be positive. If you put it back into the equation, it goes back to negative, like it changes signs. This part here is the y value of the vertex, which doesn't change. So knowing that has 2 x-intercepts, the vertex is this. This you cannot change. So the 5 would come back here. The 5 comes back here. And the -3 turns into +3. The -3, when you put it in here, some of you put like 5 plus 3 or something. You forgot the x, right? So you want to have the variable in there. And the whole bracket is squared. Some of you forgot that part. So this would have been step number 1, like plug in your vertex into the vertex form. And how do you make 2 x-intercepts? How do you make this happen? Go back to vertex form. I covered there in great detail. A and K have to have opposite signs. Because if this is above the x-axis and it points down, it will cross it twice. So you couldn't really argue with this. You could only, right, base your answer. If this is positive, which it has to stay positive, then you would have to make it point down, right? So these two opposite signs, 2 x-intercepts. I don't know if you want to make a note there. Same sign, no x-intercept, okay? And I'm going to practice this with you tomorrow. I might do some whiteboard where it's a, hey, write me this equation, write me that equation over and over, okay? And because you were struggling with this, some of you struggled with the range as well. But the range, this is what determines the range, right? If it's negative, think of the parabola as going like this, and this is -3, 5. That's your vertex, and we know it's pointing down because of that. So that's where the y is less than or equal to 5 came in. Okay. There we go. And then for the story, the elastic band story, okay, may or may not be true. Who knows? You start at 3.5, it lands at 3.5, 1.1 second, right? Remained in the air for 1.1 seconds. So the 1.1 is here when it lands on the table of the neighbor, right? Another student's desk. So you have to divide that 1.1 by 2, not multiply, to get the middle, the vertex, right? The value of the x value of the vertex, because the maximum height is 7. So some of you put 1.1 up here, and then you went times 2 to get 2.2. So you lost a mark for that, because everything else, if everything else still, if you followed through, you still got the rest of the marks there. Okay. Let's keep going. Just a classic. This is not regression at all. This is, you just plug it into Y1 and you just answer a bunch of questions. So you had to change your window. Can I just say this is no regression? In the future, turn off plot 1. Okay? Because if sometimes when you have plot 1 on and you just enter an equation yourself manually, there will be an error message. So my advice to you is like turn off plot 1 and then try to graph it again, and it will work 99% of the time. So the maximum height reached by the diver, you just find the vertex, and it's 5.6 meters at a distance of 1.33, right? So this is the horizontal distance at that maximum height. So that's why I only gave you half a mark, because you already had the information. At what horizontal height from the board did the diver land in the water? So it's the x-intercept. So that would be 3.83 meters from the board is where the diver lands on the water or makes contact with the water. Now that you have everything, you can graph the scenario, right? You start at a height of 4, reach a maximum height, and then you land at 3.83. Distance and meters, height and meters, equation, scale, all that. And then your domain and range both start at 0 because you do hit the ground. I wish I would have, in retrospect, I wish I would have asked you to come up with the domain and range here for this one. Here, the domain is 0 to 1.1. The range would be 3.5 to 7, right? 3.5 is the lowest y value, 7 is the highest y value. So there you wouldn't have had that. That's it, guys. Right? Anything else back there? No. All I did was mark this break. 3 sets of tests. But